The stench of rot lingered like a curse over the village of Darn Hollow. Once a quiet place of thatched roofs and morning bread, it now choked on the silence of empty homes and shuttered windows. Families locked themselves inside, praying the sickness would pass them over. It rarely did. The plague had no name, only symptoms: gray skin, fevered eyes, and a slow, breathless death. And now it had come for Mira. Cale pressed a damp cloth to his sister's forehead, his hands trembling despite the warmth of the fire. She lay curled on the cot, sweat slick and whispering nonsense in her sleep. He had sold nearly everything. His father's tools, their mother's pendant, even his own boots. But no amount of coin could heal what had already hollowed her from within. Sparkles, if you're drawn into Cale's world and want more stories just like this, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to A Bite of Tasty Stories. Every chapter is a new flavor of emotion and magic. And I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. The healers had stopped visiting. Even the priest had turned his back, murmuring something about fate and sacrifice. But Cale refused to accept fate. Not when Mira still breathed. Not while her fingers still clutched his hand in sleep. One evening, as twilight bled across the sky, Cale overheard a drunk muttering near the edge of the well. "The temple. The old god answers one wish, but it'll cost you." At first, he dismissed it as ale-soaked rambling. But when Mira coughed blood that night, he made up his mind. He waited until nightfall and packed only what he needed: a flask of water, a rusted blade, and Myra's ribbon tied around his wrist. He left a note on her pillow. Then he made for the forest beyond the village, where the trees grew too thick, and the wind whispered names no one wanted to remember. Deep within the forgotten woods, hidden beneath a bed of vines and half-buried bones, he found it, the temple of the old god. Its entrance yawned like a beast's mouth, stone teeth cracked and crooked. Inside, cold air clung to his skin, and ancient torches lit themselves as he passed. At the altar stood the relic of echoes, a stone so black it seemed to drink the light around it. When Cale stepped near, it spoke, not with sound, but with feeling. Regret. Hunger. Power. One miracle it offered. One wish. But it would take what he valued most. "I don't care," Cale whispered. "Take it. Just let her live." The stone pulsed. A wind without direction roared through the chamber. The ground cracked. Light exploded from the relic in a white-hot storm that burned through Cale's eyes and filled his head with a scream that was both his and not his. Then, silence. Mira awoke the next morning with no fever, no pain. Just light in her eyes and breath in her lungs. The villagers called it a miracle. Cale said nothing. Word spread fast. Children who hadn't spoken in months suddenly played in the streets. An old man with a crooked back claimed Cale laid hands on him and the ache vanished. People whispered, gifted, blessed, even chosen. They came in droves to the old house on the edge of the woods, begging Cale for help. And he helped. He always helped. But with each healing, each whispered prayer he answered, something inside him stayed silent. No joy warmed his chest when the sick embraced their loved ones. No peace settled in his bones after the cries of thanks. He smiled, but it never touched his eyes. Mira watched him with growing unease. She tried to make him laugh, the way she used to, by tugging at his sleeve or pulling faces behind the backs of villagers. He laughed. But it was empty, like someone remembering how laughter used to sound. "Do you remember when we were kids?" she asked one night by the fire. "We're not kids anymore," he said, staring at the flames as if they might swallow him. Then came the woman by the river. Her son had drowned days before. She had heard of Cale. She wept at his feet, begged him to bring the boy back. He told her calmly that death was beyond his reach. She screamed at him, cursed him, clawed at his chest. He didn't flinch. Hours later, they found her in the water, a pale bloom among the reeds. When they told Cale, he blinked once. "I warned her," was all he said. The village began to shift. No longer did people meet his gaze with awe. They glanced nervously at him, stepping aside on the road, whispering when he passed. The relic still worked, though he had stopped returning to the temple. He felt it humming beneath his skin, hollow and hungry. Even Mira had started to fear him. She followed him one evening as he walked aimlessly through the graveyard, a place he used to avoid. He stood at the edge of a fresh-dug grave, watching the villagers weep and wail for the drowned woman. He watched with dry eyes. Not out of cruelty. Not out of defiance. but because he truly didn't know what sadness felt like anymore. The first time Kale refused to speak, Mira tried to dismiss it as exhaustion. The second time, she watched the light in his eyes flicker out mid-conversation like a candle snuffed by wind. By the third, she couldn't pretend anymore. Something in her brother had vanished. She journeyed alone beyond the village, over blackened hills and into the highlands where the old roads cracked and vanished. There, she found a small hermitage etched into the rock, forgotten by time. Inside, she met a monk blind in both eyes, yet somehow able to see her grief with chilling clarity. "The relic of echoes," he said, his voice like dry leaves. "It never asks. It only takes." Mira listened, barely breathing. What did it take from Kale? His soul. Not in the sense of death, girl, but his center. The part that feels, dreams, fears. He gave that to the relic when he made his wish. No one warned him. The monk tilted his head. "It never does. A true sacrifice is made in ignorance." She returned at dusk and found Kale tending a child, a boy burning with fever. Kale laid a hand on the boy's chest. His fingers trembled. The boy's breath steadied for a moment, then stopped. Kale stared at the child's still body, confused. He was supposed to get better. The relic within him buzzed like an insect trapped in a jar. It was failing. Even its stolen magic had limits. Mira stepped forward. "Come with me. Now." He didn't argue. He rarely argued anymore. Together they walked back to the temple, though Kale moved like a man drawn by thread, not choice. Mira led him deep beneath the chamber where he'd once made the bargain. Down into the roots of the ruin, where light twisted strangely and the air thickened like syrup, they entered the Hall of Echoes. At its heart stood the Mirror of Truth, a smooth obsidian surface untouched by time. The glass pulsed faintly, as if it breathed. Kale approached it without question. His reflection didn't mimic him. Instead, the mirror showed a boy with wind-tossed hair, smiling and muddy from play, holding Myra's hand beneath a summer sky. It showed a teen clutching his chest after their mother died, weeping in secret. It showed a brother whispering songs to his sister when she was ill. Then the image flickered. The eyes in the reflection dimmed. The smile died. The hands dropped. One by one, the reflections withered, faded, fell silent. Until only the shell remained. Kale raised a hand and touched the glass. He felt nothing. Not horror. Not longing. Not recognition. Just the smooth, cold press of a truth he could no longer feel. Kale's skin had gone glassy, a pale sheen stretching across his body like ice forming beneath the surface. His eyes, once dull and distant, now shimmered faintly with unnatural light. Villagers whispered of it in frightened tones. Some said he was becoming something divine. Others said he was no longer human. But Mira saw the truth. He was breaking. The relic within him, the gift that once hummed with power, had turned greedy, consuming the last scraps of his mortality. He no longer needed to sleep. He rarely blinked. And when he bled it came out clear. Mira returned to the blind monk, desperate for answers. This time, the monk gave her a name, the reversal rite, scrawled in brittle ink within a scroll bound by bone. To undo the relic's gift, the monk warned, he must destroy it entirely. But the wish will unravel. All it healed will be unhealed. Including Mira. She didn't cry. She simply thanked him, tucked the scroll into her satchel, and returned home. That night, she found Kale sitting in the woods, unmoving, as if carved from moonlight. She knelt before him, hands trembling. "You saved me, Kale," she whispered. "But it wasn't supposed to cost you this much." He didn't respond. "You need to let me go." A flicker. A pause. His head tilted slightly, like he almost heard her. "I don't feel anything anymore," he said slowly. "But I remember things. I remember you singing, when we were small. That lullaby about the stars. You were off-key. A twitch of the lips. I think. I loved that." Myra's throat tightened. "You still can," she said. "But not like this." Suddenly, the relic surged through Kale's veins like fire. A voice, older than time, echoed in his skull. "You've tasted what gods are made of. Why crawl back into a shell of fear and flesh? Let them go. Keep the power. Become more." Visions flared. Kale walking through time untouched, raising the dead, bending the world to his will. Emotions replaced by purpose. Humanity traded for infinity. He stood, wavering. Then he heard it. Not from the relic, not from Mira, but from memory. Myra's voice, young and sweet, singing beneath a canopy of stars. A lullaby. Myra's smile lingered even as her breath faded. There was no pain in her end. Just peace, like a candle flickering out in the safety of night. Cale held her hand until it cooled in his palm. He didn't move for hours. Not when the air thickened with silence. Not when the stars shifted overhead. Not even when the dawn light spilled over her face like a blessing she would never see. The miracles unraveled in the days that followed. Limbs twisted again. Lungs filled with sickness. The old man Cale had healed slumped quietly in his chair and never rose. The villagers, once reverent, now eyed him with quiet fear. They had worshipped the miracle. Now they mourned the cost. Cale didn't argue. He didn't try to explain. He simply felt. All of it. Grief, like a tide that wouldn't recede. Guilt, raw and hot in his throat. Love, terrible and sweet, that made every memory ache. He wandered the ruins of the temple, now crumbling for good. In the cold silence of its broken heart, he buried the relic's shattered remains. No stone marked its grave. No one would remember what had once breathed within. Nor should they. In time, Cale returned to the village. Not as a healer or a prophet, but a man. One with mud on his boots, dirt beneath his nails, and loss carved into the lines around his eyes. He took up tending the graves at the edge of town. Not just Myra's, but all those lost in the unraveling. He learned their names. Spoke them aloud. Wept without shame. The villagers didn't come close. Some still bowed their heads when they saw him. Others turned away. But Cale bore it quietly. He had chosen this. And it was real. One evening, under a sky washed clean by rain, Cale sat at Myra's grave. The wind rustled through the grass, and stars glittered like scattered seeds across the heavens. He pulled a small wooden flute from his coat, cracked, old, and out of tune. He began to play. It was Myra's lullaby, off-key, halting. But he played it through, his hands shaking. And when the final note faded, he lowered the flute and let the tears come. They fell freely without shame. For the first time in what felt like eternity, Cale was whole. Not untouched. Not perfect. But real. A life. A soul. Cale walked to the altar where the relic once bound itself to him. He reached into the hollow beneath the stones and drew out its core, now shriveled but still pulsing like a dying heart. He raised it high. The relic screamed, a sound like 1,000 voices begging, promising, cursing. Cale hesitated, just for a breath. Then brought it down hard against the stone floor. It shattered. A surge of raw light erupted around them, then collapsed into stillness. And Cale fell to his knees, breathing, truly breathing, for the first time in what felt like forever. The night air was cool, carrying the faint scent of earth and rain. Cale knelt at the edge of Myra's grave, the soft soil freshly turned, a simple wooden cross marking the place where she rested. Above him, the sky stretched wide and infinite, sprinkled with stars like tiny flames burning in the dark. He pulled from his coat pocket the cracked wooden flute, Myra's favorite, worn smooth by countless fingers. His fingers trembled as they lifted it to his lips. The first note stumbled into the night, off-key, fragile, like a whisper struggling to be heard. But he pressed on, playing the lullaby Mira used to sing to him as a child, a song of stars and hope and distant dreams. With every shaky breath, the music wove through the silence, wrapping around the trees and the fields and the sleeping village beyond. And though his eyes were filled with tears, Cale smiled, small and broken, but real. As the final note faded into the night, he lowered the flute and let the tears fall freely down his face. He was whole again. Not unscarred. Not unbroken. But truly, undeniably alive. And beneath the endless stars, that was enough.